The Velthri Empire had ruled the stars for 400 years. They had conquered 12 star systems. They had defeated every enemy. Their ships were the fastest. Their weapons were the strongest. Their soldiers were the bravest. Every species they met either surrendered or died. The Velthri believed they understood everything about war, peace, and survival. They had protocols for every situation. They had studied hundreds of alien species. They knew how beings thought, how they feared, how they could be controlled. Then they found Earth. The blue planet was small and far from the center of the galaxy. The creatures living there called themselves humans. They had only recently learned to travel between stars. Their ships were slow. Their weapons were weak. By every measure, they were nothing special. Ambassador Telvos was given the task of meeting them. He was old, even by Velthri standards. He had served the Empire for 200 years. He had negotiated with warriors, traitors, and kings. He had seen species beg for mercy and others fight until extinction. Nothing surprised him anymore, or so he thought. The meeting was set for Imperial Station Corinth, a massive structure floating in neutral space. Telvos prepared everything according to protocol. The meeting room was designed to show imperial power. The walls displayed maps of conquered territories. The chairs for the humans were slightly lower than the Velthri seats. Every detail was meant to remind the visitors that they were small and the Empire was vast. The human ship arrived exactly on time. This was noted. Punctuality suggested discipline. Telvos stood at the docking bay with his team. Beside him was High Commander Orvith, a military officer with cold eyes and a reputation for ruthlessness. Behind them stood guards, translators, and analysts ready to record every word and gesture. The airlock opened with a soft hiss. 5 humans walked out. The first was a woman. She was not tall. Her hair was black and pulled back from her face. Her eyes were dark and warm. She wore simple clothes in dark blue. Her name, the file said, was Una. Behind her came a man named Doan. He was big, with wide shoulders and thick arms. His face looked friendly, which confused the analysts. Large males in most species tried to look threatening. The other 3 were called Mirai, Taiwan, and Jisoo. Mirai was young with quick eyes that moved around the room. Taiwan was quiet and stood slightly apart, looking at the floor. Jisoo was the smallest, with soft features and gentle movements. Telvos performed the traditional Velthri greeting. He bowed slowly and showed his palms to indicate peaceful intentions. It was a gesture of respect, though also a subtle reminder that the Empire chose peace when it could have chosen war. Una smiled. The smile was unexpected. It was not nervous. It was not submissive. It was simply warm, as if she was greeting an old friend. She bowed in return, matching his depth exactly. Then she reached into a bag hanging at her side. Every guard tensed. Hands moved toward weapons. Una pulled out a small box wrapped in bright paper. "Gift," she said through the translator device. "For you, Ambassador?" Telvos did not move. His training covered many things: bribes, threats, hidden weapons, poison. But a wrapped box with colorful paper was not in any protocol. "Please," Una said. "Open it, slowly, carefully." Telvos unwrapped the paper. Inside was a small ceramic figure. It was shaped like an earth animal called a cat. The cat was white, with orange spots. One of its paws was raised in the air. "It is for luck," Una explained. "We call it a lucky cat. You put it somewhere important, and it brings good fortune." Telvos stared at the object. "Luck," he repeated. Double quotes. "Yes, we hope it brings you happiness." Doan stepped forward with a wide grin. He was carrying a large container. "We brought many of them. For everyone on the station, 1,200 lucky cats." There was silence. High Commander Orvith spoke first. "You brought 1,200 ceramic figures as gifts for our crew?" "Of course," Una said. "It would be rude to bring gifts only for the leaders." "Everyone deserves luck." As the analysts exchanged glances. This made no sense. Gift-giving in diplomacy was always strategic. You gave gifts to important people to win their favor. You did not waste resources on common soldiers and workers. Telvos placed the lucky cat carefully on the table. We thank you for this gesture. You are welcome. Yuna clasped her hands together. Now, shall we see our quarters? We have had a long journey, and Taiwan becomes grumpy when he is tired. Taiwan, the quiet man, looked up with mild embarrassment. I do not become grumpy. You become a little grumpy, Ray said with a small smile. The humans laughed softly among themselves. Telvos did not know what to do with this. Species facing the Velthri Empire did not laugh. They trembled. They calculated. They prepared. They did not make jokes about each other in front of potential enemies. He led them to their assigned quarters. The rooms were comfortable, but plain. Surveillance devices were hidden in every corner. The Empire would watch and listen to everything. As Yuna entered her room, she paused at the door. Ambassador Telvos? He turned. Yes. The gardens we passed on the way here, they looked sad. Telvos blinked. The station's botanical section was old and poorly maintained. It was considered non-essential. Resources are directed to more important areas. Yuna nodded slowly. Plants need care. When they do not receive it, they become sick. She smiled again. Perhaps we can help while we are here. Taiwan knows much about growing things. She closed the door gently. Telvos stood in the corridor for a long moment. Then he walked to the command center where Orvith was waiting. Orvith demanded, What are they planning? Telvos sat down heavily. I do not know. What do you mean you do not know? You are our best diplomat, I know. Telvos looked at the lucky cat still in his hand. Its painted eyes stared back at him with frozen cheerfulness. They gave us 1,200 ceramic cats. They made jokes about being tired. They offered to fix our gardens. It must be a deception. But I cannot see the shape of it. Telvos set the cat on the console. They are either the most clever species we have ever encountered, or they are something else entirely. Something else. Telvos did not answer. He had no words for what he was feeling. In 200 years, he had never been confused. He had always understood what other beings wanted: power, safety, resources, survival. But these humans wanted to give away ceramic cats and grow plants. The Empire's confusion had only begun. The formal negotiations began on the third day. The Empire had prepared a list of demands. Trade agreements that favored the Velthari. Military access to human space. Recognition of imperial authority in the sector. The usual terms given to lesser species. Yuna read through the documents slowly. She did not rush. She asked questions about specific words and their meanings. She made small notes on a paper pad with a writing tool instead of using digital devices. Hi, Commander Orvith watched her with growing impatience. These terms are standard. Every species accepts them. Yuna looked up with a thoughtful expression. Every species. Those who wish to survive. I see. Yuna set down the documents. Before we discuss these matters, I have a question. Telvos leaned forward. Here it was. The counter-demand. The reveal of their true intentions. Your station's gardens, Yuna said. They are dying. There was a long pause. The botanical section is not relevant to these negotiations, Orvith said flatly. Perhaps not directly. But Taiwan examined the soil samples yesterday. The mineral balance is wrong. The light cycles are incorrect. The plants are suffering because no one has cared for them properly. Orvith's secondary eyes, smaller ones positioned near his temples, blinked rapidly. This was a sign of confusion among his species. You examined our soil? Taiwan is curious about growing things. He asked permission from a maintenance worker named Vorith. Vorith seemed happy that someone was interested. Telvos checked his datapad. Vorith was a low-ranking technician assigned to waste management. He had no authority to grant access to anything. But technically, the botanical section was open to all personnel. What is your point? Orvith demanded. Taiwan would like to help repair the gardens, if you will allow it. The room fell silent. You want to fix our plants? Orvith said slowly, as if testing whether the words made sense. Yes. Why? Una tilted her head. Because they are dying. And because we will be here for some time during negotiations. Taiwan needs something to do with his hands, or he becomes restless. Across the table, Taiwan nodded. Idle hands make trouble, he said quietly. It was the first time he had spoken in the formal setting. Orvith looked at Telvos. Telvos had no guidance to offer. There was no protocol for enemy diplomats asking to perform agricultural work. Very well, Orvith said finally. Do as you wish with the plants. But this does not change our demands, of course, Una said with a gentle smile. Now, about Clause 7 regarding military inspections, the negotiations continued. Una was polite but impossible to pin down. She neither accepted nor rejected the imperial demands. She asked for clarification. She requested time to consider. She suggested alternatives that sounded reasonable, but somehow changed everything. Orvith grew frustrated. You are delaying. I am being careful, Una replied. These are important decisions. My people trust me to make good choices. I cannot rush. Your people are weak. You have no bargaining position. Una did not seem offended. Perhaps. But we are here, talking, rather than fighting. That seems like a good position to me. Meanwhile, Taiwan worked in the gardens. He started early each morning before the negotiations began. He tested the soil. He adjusted the lighting systems. He removed dead plants and treated sick ones. He worked slowly and carefully, talking to the plants as if they could hear him. Station crew began to notice. At first they watched from a distance. A human digging in the dirt was a strange sight. But Taiwan smiled at anyone who came close. He explained what he was doing in simple words. He asked the crew about their favorite plants and which ones they missed from their home worlds. On the fourth day, a young Velthari female named Suri approached him. She was barely an adult by their standards, working her first assignment in station maintenance. Why do you care about our plants? She asked. Taiwan looked up from his work. His hands were covered in dark soil. Plants are important. They do not produce anything useful. They waste resources. They produce air. They produce beauty. They produce calm. Taiwan gestured to a small flowering bush he had revived. When you see something green and alive, does it not make you feel something? Suri considered this. I do not know. We are taught not to waste attention on non-essential things. Everything is essential to something. Taiwan returned to his work. This plant is essential to the insects that eat its leaves. The insects are essential to the birds that eat them. The birds are essential to the joy of those who hear their songs. Connection everywhere. Suri stood watching for a long time. The next day, she returned with a small container. Seeds, she said. From my home world. My mother gave them to me when I left. I did not know what to do with them. Taiwan accepted the container with both hands, as if receiving something precious. We will plant them together. They did. And when the first green shoots appeared a week later, Suri smiled for the first time since arriving on the station. Word spread among the crew. The human in the gardens was strange but kind. He listened. He remembered names. He made things grow. Morale reports began showing unusual patterns. Crew members in sections near the botanical area reported higher satisfaction. Sick days decreased. Arguments between workers became less frequent. Orvith studied these reports with deep suspicion. He is doing something to our people. He is growing plants, Telvo said. It must be more than that. Some kind of psychological operation. A way to weaken our resolve. Telvos looked out the window at the garden below. Taiwan was teaching 3 crew members how to transplant seedlings. They were laughing at something he had said, perhaps Telvos admitted. But I cannot see the weapon. I only see a man who likes dirt and green things. That is exactly what they want you to think. But despite his suspicions, Orvith did not stop Taiwan's work. The gardens were indeed recovering. Colors were returning. The air in that section of the station smelled fresher, and somewhere deep in Orvoth's private thoughts, a small question began to form. What if the humans were not pretending? What if they simply cared? He pushed the thought away. It was too dangerous. The Empire was built on the understanding that all beings acted from self-interest. Kindness without purpose was impossible. It had to be. Back in the negotiation room, Una set down another document. I have been thinking about Clause 12, and Orvith asked tiredly, I think we can find agreement. But first, would you like some tea? We brought it from Earth. Marae makes it very well. Marae was already preparing cups at a small station she had set up in the corner. No one had authorized this, but no one had stopped it either. The tea was warm and slightly sweet. Orvith found himself drinking it before he realized what he was doing. What is this flavor? He asked. Jasmine, Marae said. From flowers? My grandmother grew them. Orvith set down the cup carefully. He was a military commander who had ordered the deaths of thousands. He had burned cities and broken arms, and now he was drinking flower water prepared by a young human, a woman who smiled at him like he was a friend. The Empire was losing something in these negotiations. Orvith was certain of it. He just could not figure out what. On the 8th day, the station almost died. It began with a small alarm in Sector 7. A cooling system had failed in the secondary reactor. These things happened. Stations were old. Parts wore out. Technicians would fix it, and life would continue. But this time, the backup system also failed. Then the emergency system. One by one, safety measures collapsed like falling stones. The reactor began to overheat. Alarms screamed through the corridors. Red lights flashed on every wall. The station's voice announced evacuation orders in calm, mechanical tones that did not match the panic spreading through the crew. Sector 7 housed 300 workers and their families. The residential blocks, the school, the medical center. If the reactor exploded, they would all die. High Commander Orvith ran to the command center. His officers shouted reports at him from every direction. The reactor core was critical. Repair teams could not reach it. The heat was too intense. The radiation too high. How long? Orvith demanded. Out. 12 minutes to meltdown? Maybe less. Orvith closed his eyes. 300 lives, families, children, and nothing he could do. Then the door opened, and the humans entered. Marae walked straight to the main display. She studied the reactor diagrams with focused intensity. Her fingers traced lines on the screen, following pathways and connections. Here, she said, pointing. Junction C7. The problem started here. The Velthery engineer stared at her. How do you know this? I noticed the discoloration when I was walking through that section 3 days ago. Heat stress patterns. The metal was warping slightly. I thought someone would fix it. Orvith stepped forward. You were observing our infrastructure? I was drawing pictures. Marae pulled out a small notebook and flipped to a page covered in sketches. There, among drawings of crew members and plants and architectural details, was a careful rendering of Junction C7. The warped metal was clearly visible in her lines. I notice things when I draw, she said simply. It helps me see. Doan was already moving toward the door. How do we reach this junction? You cannot, an engineer said. The corridor is flooded with radiation. Anyone who enters will die. How much radiation? Fatal within 4 minutes. Doan nodded. Then we have 4 minutes. Where are your emergency suits? The Velthery exchanged glances. No one volunteered for suicide missions. It was not logical. One life could not outweigh 300, but still no one wanted to be the one who died. I will go with you, said a young officer named Haran. His voice shook, but his stance was firm. Someone must know the systems. Marae grabbed his arm. No, I will go. I know exactly what needs to be done. Doan will carry the tools. Shh, you will both die, Telvo said quietly. Marae looked at him. Her eyes were steady. Maybe, but those children in Sector 7 will not. The command center fell silent. On the screens, everyone watched as Marae and Doan entered the contaminated zone. Their radiation counters climbed immediately. Red numbers rising toward death. Mara moved with precision. She directed Doan to specific panels, calling out instructions in a calm voice. Her hands did not shake as she worked. Her focus did not break. "There," she said, pulling a damaged component free. "This is the failure. The backup systems were trying to root through it. They could not." "Can you fix it?" Orvith asked through the communication system. "No, but I can bypass it. Dohan, hand me the red cable." Dohan's hands were steady too. He was a large man, but his movements were careful and exact. He followed Murray's instructions without question, trusting her completely. The radiation counters passed the safety threshold, then the danger threshold, then the critical threshold. "You need to leave," Haran said desperately. "You have less than a minute." "Almost done," Murray said. Her fingers connected the final wires. The reactor's temperature display flickered, held, then began to drop. The alarm stopped in the command center. No one moved. No one breathed. They watched the numbers fall 450 degrees. 400, 350, till they stabilized at safe levels. Murray's voice came through the speaker. Slightly breathless. "It is fixed. Temporary repair only. You will need proper replacement within 72 hours. "Get out of there," Orvith ordered. Now, they emerged from the contaminated zone for minutes and 37 seconds after entering. The medical team rushed forward. Scanners swept over them, measuring the damage. "Radiation exposure is significant," the chief medical officer reported. "But within treatable range, they will recover fully." Murray sat on the floor, her back against the wall. Her hands were finally trembling. Doan sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "That was close," she said quietly. "You were amazing," Doan replied. "I was terrified. That is what amazing looks like." Orvith stood over them. His expression was unreadable. After a long moment, he spoke. "Why did you do this?" Murray looked up at him. "Because people were going to die. They were not your people. We are not your allies. These negotiations may still fail. We may still become your enemies. That does not matter. It must matter. Everything has a purpose. Every action has a reason." Murray was silent for a moment. Then she said, "On Earth, there is a story about a man walking on a beach. The beach is covered with thousands of starfish that have washed up on the shore. They are dying in the sun. The man begins picking them up and throwing them back into the ocean, one by one." She paused. "Another person comes and asks him why he bothers. There are too many starfish. He cannot save them all. His effort does not matter." "And what does the man say?" Murray smiled tiredly. "He picks up another starfish, throws it into the water, and says, 'It mattered to that one.'" Orvith stood very still. Around him, his officers and crew were watching. Many of them had family in Sector 7. Many of them had just watched a human risk her life for strangers. "I do not understand you," Orvith said finally. "Your people make no sense," maybe Murray agreed. "But your station is still here. Your people are still alive. Sometimes sense is not the most important thing." She closed her eyes and leaned her head back against the wall. The medical team moved in to take her to treatment. In the gardens, Taiwan heard the news. He set down his tools and walked to the medical center. When he arrived, he simply sat beside Murray's bed and held her hand. "You scared me," he said. "I know. I am sorry. Do not be sorry. Just rest." He stayed there through the night, a quiet presence watching over her sleep. The station's crew passed by the window, looking in at the two humans. They did not speak, but something in their faces had changed. Yuna visited briefly. She touched Murray's forehead gently, then looked at Taiwan. "She will be fine," the doctors told her. "I know," Yuna said. "She's the bravest person I know." When morning came, Murray woke to find flowers beside her bed. Native plants from 6 different Velthary worlds, carefully arranged in a simple vase. There was no note. She did not need one. The Empire was beginning to understand something. Even if they did not have words for it yet, some things mattered more than strategy. More than power. More than logic. Some things simply mattered because they mattered, and that was enough. The Imperial Intelligence Division worked through every night for 3 weeks. Their mission was simple: understand the humans, find their strategy, reveal their hidden purpose. Analyst Corveth led the team. He was considered the best mind in behavioral prediction. He had broken the codes of 17 species. He had predicted rebellions before they happened. He had identified enemy agents from the smallest details of their behavior, but the humans defeated him. Their actions followed no pattern, he reported to High Commander Orveth. They give gifts without expecting return. They help without demanding payment. They share resources freely. Every model I build fails. They must want something, Orveth insisted. If they do, I cannot find it. The most puzzling case was Jisoo. She was the quietest of the human delegation. She spoke little in negotiations. She smiled often but said less than anyone. She seemed almost invisible compared to Yuna's leadership, Doan's strength, Murray's sharp mind, and Taiwan's gentle work, but Jisoo was everywhere. She appeared in the recreation halls, sitting with off-duty crew. She visited the food preparation areas, watching the cooks work. She walked the corridors slowly, stopping to look at every detail, and she carried paper, not the thin digital sheets the Empire used for documents. Real paper, made from plant materials, brought from Earth, colorful squares in red, blue, gold. In green dot, the first time anyone noticed what she was doing was in the children's education. Center Velthari children were raised with strict efficiency. Their education focused on useful skills: mathematics, engineering, military history, resource management. Play was scheduled and limited. Creativity was considered wasteful. Jisoo sat in the corner of the center during a break period. She had a single sheet of blue paper in her hands. The children watched, curious but cautious, as she began to fold. Her fingers moved with practiced ease. The paper twisted, turned, creased. Shapes emerged from the flat surface corners, became wings. Edges became tails. When she finished, she held up a small bird. "It is called a crane," she said softly. "In my country, we believe that if you fold 1,000 cranes, you can make a wish come true." A young boy named Kethos stepped closer. He was 7 years old, small for his age, and often overlooked by his teachers. A wish? Any wish? Health for someone you love. Peace for your world. A dream you want to come true. "That sounds like superstition," an older girl said. Her name was Vela, and she was training to be an engineer. "Paper cannot make wishes real," Jisoo smiled. "Maybe not. But the folding takes time and care. While you fold, you think about your wish. You put your hope into each crane. By the time you finish 1,000, you have spent many hours thinking about what matters most to you." She held out the crane to Kethos. "Perhaps the magic is not in the paper. Perhaps it is in the hoping." Kethos took the crane carefully. He turned it in his hands, amazed at how flat paper had become something beautiful. "Can you teach me?" he asked, of course. Within an hour, 7 children sat around Jisoo, learning to fold. Their first attempts were clumsy. Corners did not line up. Creases went wrong. Paper tore from too much handling. But Jisoo was patient. "Slowly," she said. "There is no hurry. Each fold deserves attention. When you rush, you make mistakes. When you take your time, you create something lovely." Vela, the skeptical older girl, found herself folding despite her doubts. There was something calming about the repetitive motion. Something satisfying about watching chaos become order, flatness become form. "This is pointless," she said, even as she completed her 4th crane. "Probably," Jisoo agreed. "But is it not beautiful anyway?" Vela looked at the small paper bird in her hand. It was not perfect. One wing was slightly crooked, but it was hers. She had made it from nothing. "May I keep it?" she asked. "It is yours." The origami spread like a quiet fire through the station. Children taught their parents. Parents taught their colleagues. Paper cranes appeared on desks and shelves and control panels. Someone started a collection in the botanical gardens, hanging them from the restored trees like strange fruit. Analyst Corveth watched this development with growing frustration. He brought samples to his laboratory. He analyzed the paper composition, the folding techniques, the distribution patterns. There must be hidden messages, he insisted. Coded information in the fold sequences. There was nothing. Just paper. Just birds. He interviewed crew members who had learned the technique. "Why do you do this?" he asked. "What benefit does it provide?" The answers confused him. "It helps me relax after shift. My daughter smiles when I bring her a new animal. I do not know. I just like it. No strategic purpose. No hidden agenda. Just people finding small moments of peace in a harsh universe." Korvat's final report was only 2 sentences. The activity serves no military, economic, or diplomatic purpose. It appears to be performed solely for emotional benefit. Further analysis cannot be completed because there is nothing further to analyze. Meanwhile, Yuna continued the negotiations. Progress was slow, but steady. She gave ground on minor points. She held firm on important ones. She never raised her voice or showed anger. When talks became difficult, she suggested breaks for tea. One afternoon, Ambassador Telvos asked her directly, "What do you actually want?" "Not the official position. The truth." Yuna set down her teacup. She thought for a long moment before answering. "Friendship," she said. "Trade would be nice. Cultural exchange. Students from Earth visiting your worlds. Students from your worlds visiting ours. Artists sharing their work. Scientists solving problems together. And power. Territory. Resources. We have enough territory. We are still learning to use the resources we have. Power." She shook her head. "Power is a strange thing. The more you chase it, the more it runs away. But if you simply try to be good, to help others, to create beauty and kindness wherever you go, power sometimes follows. The kind of power that matters anyway." Telvos leaned back in his chair. He had negotiated with conquerors and tyrants, with desperate refugees and cunning merchants. He had never met anyone like Yuna. "Your species confuses me," he admitted. "We confuse ourselves sometimes." Yuna smiled. "But we are learning, slowly, with many mistakes. Perhaps that is the best any species can do." That evening, Jisoo taught Telvos to fold a crane. His first attempt was terrible, a crumpled mess that looked nothing like a bird. His second was worse. But Jisoo did not laugh or criticize. She simply showed him again and again, until his clumsy fingers found the rhythm. When he finally completed one, it's perfect but recognizable, he felt something he had not felt in 200 years. Pride in something small. Joy in something useless. Peace in something meaningless. He placed the crane on his desk, next to the lucky cat. "What is your wish?" Jisoo asked. Telvos considered the question seriously. He had spent centuries wishing for power, for success, for the Empire's dominance. Those wishes felt hollow now. "Understanding," he said finally. "I wish to understand." Jisoo nodded, as if this was exactly the right answer. "Then keep folding," she said. "Understanding comes slowly, one crane at a time." Outside in the garden, Taiwan planted seeds from 6 more worlds. Children helped him, their hands dirty with soil, their pockets full of paper cranes. The Empire was changing, one small moment at a time, and no one could explain exactly why. 6 months passed on Station Corinth. The negotiations ended not with victory or defeat, but with something no one had predicted: genuine agreement. The Corinth Accords became the first treaty in Imperial history that granted full equality to a species the Velthari had considered inferior. No demands for submission. No threats of military action. No forced trade agreements. Instead, there were provisions for cultural exchange, for scientific cooperation, for open borders and shared knowledge. For friendship, High Commander Orvith was required to write an assessment for the Imperial Council. He sat at his desk for 3 days, struggling to find the right words. The lucky cat watched him from the corner of his workspace. Beside it sat a small paper crane folded by his own hands. In a pot near the window grew a plant from Eartha tomato vine, Taiwan had called it, that would soon produce red fruit. Orvith began to write. The human delegation arrived on Station Corinth with gifts we did not request, skills we did not need, and kindness we did not understand. Over 6 months, they restored our gardens, saved our people from disaster, taught our children to make art from paper, and transformed our station in ways no weapon could match. I have spent 40 years commanding soldiers. I have won battles that seemed impossible. I have made decisions that cost thousands of lives. I believed I understood power. I was wrong. The humans taught me that power is not only the ability to destroy, it is also the ability to create, to heal, to connect, to make others want to stand beside you rather than against you. Their actions during their stay were flawless in execution. Every task they performed was done with skill and care, but their motivations remain mysterious to me. They helped without expecting reward. They gave without counting cost. They treated strangers as friends before friendship was earned. I have come to believe this is not weakness. It may be their greatest strength. An army can conquer a planet, but it cannot make that planet want to be conquered. The humans make others want to be around them. Wanting, I have learned, is more powerful than force. I recommend full implementation of the Corinth Accords. I also recommend that Imperial officers study human methods of engagement. Not to copy them, I do not think we can copy something we do not fully understand, but to learn from them. Perhaps in time, we will understand. Until then, I will continue folding paper cranes and watering my tomato plant. There are worse ways to spend one's time. He signed the report and sent it to the council. Then he walked to the gardens. The botanical section was unrecognizable from 6 months ago. Where there had been dying plants and empty soil, there was now a forest of colors. Trees from 20 different worlds grew side by side. Flowers bloomed in impossible combinations. A small stream ran through the center. T1 had convinced the engineers to install it. And fish swam in the clear water. Children played among the plants. Adults sat on benches reading or talking or simply breathing the fresh air. Paper cranes hung from branches, thousands of them now. Moving gently in the artificial breeze, Una was there, sitting on a stone beside the stream. She looked up as Orvith approached. "Commander, have you come to say goodbye?" "The transport leaves in 2 hours." Orvith sat beside her, something he never would have done 6 months ago. "I wanted to thank you." "For what?" "I do not know exactly, but I feel I should say it anyway." Una laughed, a warm, genuine sound. "That is very human of you, is it? Perhaps you are contagious." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Around them, the garden hummed with life. "Will you return?" Orvith asked. "I hope so. There is much more to do. More gardens to plant. More cranes to fold. More tea to share. More confusing to cause. That too." Una smiled. "But I think confusion can be good. It means you are learning something new. Certainty is comfortable, but it does not help you grow." Across the garden, the other humans were saying their own goodbyes. Tywin knelt beside young Suri, the maintenance worker who had become his first student. He pressed seeds into her hands, gifts from a dozen worlds he had collected during his stay. "Keep planting," he said, "even when it seems useless, even when others do not understand. Plants do not ask why they grow. They simply grow. There is wisdom in that." Sori held the seeds like treasure. "I will. I promise." Murray stood with Haran, the young officer who had volunteered to help her during the reactor crisis. They had become close friends in the months since. He had learned to sketch from her. She had learned Velthari combat forms from him. An unlikely exchange, but natural somehow. "Stay safe," Murray said. "Stay curious," Haran replied. They clasped hands in the human styla, a gesture that had spread through the station. Almost as quickly as the paper cranes, Doan was surrounded by a group of young soldiers. He had spent months training with them, not in combat, but in something he called cooperative strength. Working together to lift heavy objects, supporting each other through difficult exercises, building trust through shared effort. "Remember," he told them, "the strongest person is not the one who can defeat others. It is the one who can help others become strong." The soldiers nodded seriously. Several of them had transferred their loyalty in ways their commanders did not entirely understand. They would follow Doan anywhere if he asked, but he never asked. He only offered, and Jessa quiet, gentle Jessuas, in the children's center, one last time. The walls were covered with origami now, cranes and boats and flowers and animals, each one made by small hands, learning patience, learning care, learning that beautiful things could come from simple beginnings. Kethos, the small boy who had been her first student, gave her a gift. It was a crane folded from silver paper, more perfect than anything a child should have been able to make. I made 1,000, he said proudly. My wish is that you come back. Jisu's eyes filled with tears. She knelt and hugged him tightly. I will try, she whispered. I will try. 2 hours later, the human ship departed from Station Corinth. The crew gathered at the observation windows to watch it go. Thousands of beings, soldiers and workers and families and children watching. A small vessel carried 5 strange creatures back to their blue world. Ambassador Telvos stood apart. Holding his lucky cat in one hand and a paper crane in the other, he understood now. Or thought he did. The humans had not come to conquer. They had not come to negotiate in the traditional sense. They had come to show another way of being. A way that valued kindness over calculation, connection over control, hope over power. Were they naive? Perhaps the galaxy was dangerous. Not everyone would respond to gifts and gardens and paper birds. Some would see kindness as weakness and try to exploit it. But watching the human ship disappear into the stars, Telvos thought, what if enough beings saw it differently? What if kindness, offered freely and often, created its own protection? What if the humans were planting something larger than gardens, planting the possibility of a gentler universe? It was a foolish hope, irrational, impossible to justify with data and logic, but foolish hopes. He had learned sometimes changed everything. He placed the crane on the observation window's ledge, facing the stars. A small gesture. Meaningless, perhaps, but maybe that was exactly the point. Maybe meaning was something you created, not something you found. Maybe purpose came from the choosing, not from the having. Maybe the humans understood something the Empire had forgotten in its centuries of conquest, that life was not a problem. To be solved, it was a gift to be shared. The stars sparkled in the endless dark. Somewhere out there, 5 humans were traveling home, carrying stories of a station that had learned to fold paper birds, and somewhere in Telvos's ancient heart, new feeling was growing. He did not have a word for it in his language, but the humans, he suspected, would call it hope.